Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and yes, there is one case that we have to talk about today. That is Jeffrey Epstein. The question is, was it a suicide or was there something nefarious? Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and today we're talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jeffrey Epstein was apparently this wealthy business guy. Apparently, no one really ever saw him work, but, about a decade ago, he was being prosecuted for child sex trafficking in Florida, and he cut a deal whereby the federal charges wouldn't go forward, and he pled guilty to a couple counts of prostitution. Spent a year in jail down there in Florida where he was able to get work release, so he was able to be out some 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and even when he was in custody, had it pretty cushy. Fast forward to 2019, Jeffrey Epstein gets indicted for child sex trafficking, basically the same facts, and the case is moving forward. His lawyers try pretty hard to get him released from custody, but ultimately he's held in custody. About a week or so ago, he is found, and it's believed to be an alleged suicide attempt. Well, he did it again. This past Saturday, we talked about it when we went live, and what did I predict previously? Yes, I predicted it. Would he actually make it to trial? I'm sure there's lots of powerful people that don't want their name associated with him, let alone him saying what he may have seen. Now, on the other hand, he is charged with exploitation of children, and so he is not exactly high on the hierarchy in jail, let alone the Bureau of Prisons. So it's very likely that the prisoners will take care of him or make life unbearable for him. We'll see if Mr. Epstein makes it to trial. He's now dead of an apparent suicide. Now, words have been used to describe what's going on. Incompetence, astonished, stunned. Let's face it, this individual has already attempted to commit suicide. At some point within the last week, he's taken off of suicide watch. I've seen some information that would suggest that his attorneys asked that he be taken off of suicide watch, but that's not something an attorney can decide. That request, even if it's put in, there's still protocol that needs to be followed in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and normally it involves some sort of psychiatrist or psychologist to do an evaluation to see if the individual on suicide watch is still a danger to themselves or to others. There's been no indication that that was done, just simply that he was taken off of suicide watch. He also had a single cell. There's no video monitoring, and the correctional officers who should have been checking in on him every 30 minutes or so were not doing that. That's where the incompetence comes about. The Attorney General of the United States was stunned as to why this could happen, because let's face it, when you're in custody, yes, the state is trying to prosecute you, but they also have a duty at that point to keep you safe, even safe from yourself. These types of charges are somebody who already has a previous suicide attempt, should have been watched with a lot of frequency, and he should have been watched very closely. Wouldn't it be ironic if Epstein's estate, or I think he has a brother, were to bring a wrongful death suit because he killed himself because they failed to follow their own procedures? Who knows? What we do know is Jeffrey Epstein was paying his attorneys to come talk about his legal case with him for some 12 hours per day. Assuming these New York attorneys getting those New York rates, probably billing a good $1,000 an hour, probably a couple of attorneys at the jail, probably another couple associates back at the office charging $6.50 an hour. These people are also going to be a little bummed that this case is over. I heard the Attorney General state today that this case is going forward, obviously as it relates to Epstein, because remember, he now dies with a completely clean record. Jeffrey Epstein dies now an innocent man. There's been no conviction because he's passed away. And the last time we saw this predicament in a high-profile case was the Enron trials of Kenneth Lay, where he was ultimately convicted and then died of a heart attack. But his conviction was never finalized because he passed away. Therefore, it made it very difficult for the criminal forfeiture proceedings to kick in to get the restitution, to get that back to the victims. And so, very similar situation here. The government had charged criminal forfeiture so that they could try to seize any of these assets of Mr. Epstein that they believed were involved in this criminal child sex ring. And they could seize that, sell it, use that money to give it to restitution to the victims in the case. That's not going to happen. It just got a heck of a lot more difficult, whether it's through private suit or a case by the government to do a civil forfeiture action against Mr. Epstein's estate to try and seize those assets. So Mr. Epstein's victims are not going to see justice in this case, in the sense that they'll never be able to confront him and point to him in court and say, that's the man that did terrible things to me. Or stand at his sentencing and say, that terrible man did terrible things to me. Please sentence him to the maximum. So justice delayed is justice denied. Here, probably no justice for the victims. But let's also talk about what we do know about Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had quite a list of famous and powerful people. And in some 2,000 pages of documents that were released last week, and being able to look at flight logs, you can see that people that were on the Lolita Express included former President Clinton, former ambassador and former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, and is nothing sacred? Even John Glenn, former senator, former astronaut John Glenn actually appeared on Jeffrey Epstein's flight log at one time. And this Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who had assisted Jeffrey Epstein in obtaining these women, to underage women, girls, to do what Mr. Epstein wanted to do. Where is she? Apparently, she is kind of into the wind. Nobody seems to be able to find her. Once again, she was an accomplice. She was a co-conspirator. She needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law because clearly she participated and knew exactly what was going on. The Attorney General also stated that these individuals should not sleep well at night if they were involved with Mr. Epstein, because they, being the government, are moving forward, and are going to prosecute all associated with this case. Why? Because they have to. The government looks incompetent. The Federal Bureau of Prisons looks incompetent. They didn't follow their own procedures, and what's really surprising is that the conspiracy theories that are already floating around, or as quickly as last Saturday. When we talked about this case, when we went live on Saturday morning, we had people that said, unless I see the body, the autopsy, and DNA, I don't believe that Epstein is dead. I think he was, people would say, I think he was murdered. Others said that he escaped. All kinds of conspiracy theories running around out there. And even today, the FBI is apparently livid that President Trump tweeted something kind of growing into the conspiracy theories that the hashtag Clinton body count builds. And I've seen stuff that said the Trump body count builds. So this type of incompetence really allows the imagination to run wild. Do I think that there was some grand conspiracy to do this? No. Do I think he committed suicide? Yes. Okay. Somebody who wants to kill themselves in that type of situation is going to find a way to do it. Epstein knew his days were numbered. We're talking about a man who lived in a $70 million mansion, townhouse in New York City. He had private jets. He had private islands that he owned. Do you think he's really going to want to live the rest of his life in a 6x6 cement box for the rest of his days? Probably not. He was just looking for the opportunity. We talked about this Saturday as well. Prisoners learn routines of the guards in any kind of correctional facility. They know who's lazy. They know who does their job. They know what they can get away with, and it doesn't take that much to do it. If an inmate wants to kill themselves, they will find a way to do it. Now, in nearly 25 years of practicing criminal defense, have I ever had a client commit suicide in custody? No, because the people that are guarding them are very hyper-vigilant to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay? I've had them get out of custody and kill themselves. I've had clients that have died of natural causes when they've got out. I've had them die of accidents when they get out, but never in custody. So it is a little rare, but it does happen. Jeffrey Epstein was at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, which is basically the holding area there in New York City where people are waiting trial. Most recently, El Chapo was in this facility. They managed to keep him there, and Mr. El Chapo had a history of being able to vanish, but they were able to do that, keep him safe there in this particular institution. Now, the prison guards, correctional officers, they don't like to be called guards, the correctional officers, they're going to have some explaining to do as to why they didn't follow the rules in this particular situation. But mark my word, because let's face it, they've begun their investigation. How long does it take to investigate? Ask the people, what did you do? Why didn't you do it? Let's look at the videotapes, etc. That ought to take about a day, right? I guarantee you this investigation, like all investigations where the government investigates themselves, will take months and months and months, whereby nobody cares about it by the time they finish, and they'll say procedures will follow, but nothing big. Somebody's head should roll for this. Somebody should lose their job over it, but I make this prediction that no one will get fired. Because let's face it, does anyone in the federal government really ever get fired? I don't think they do. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Did Jeffrey Epstein commit suicide? Was he suicided by powerful forces? What is your theory? I want to hear about it, because we know the investigation is going to take forever. And by the time we do it, there's going to be so much misinformation out there that the conspiracy theories will be running wild. But they're going to be founded in some basis of truth because of the incompetence on the part of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. If you like the channel, please subscribe. If you like the video, hit that like button, and please leave a comment. I want to know what your thoughts are on Jeffrey Epstein. Was justice done, or is it justice denied? Let me know, because we want to talk about it.